Welcome back to another episode of Guns 101. I'm Mitch, your host, and today we are going to talk about the Springfield trapdoor rifles. So the history on this rifle, this particular one is an 1884 action design, and the stock is actually from 1889. You can see the dates on that, and I'll bring you in and show you in a second when I give it a closer look. But the history on this rifle is at the end of the Civil War, smokeless powder became a thing. The French designed it, and they started designing, all the countries started designing what they call needle fire rifles, which have really, really, really long firing pins, and most of them shoot single cartridges. Well, the U.S. were like, we have a bunch of muskets. The Civil War just ended, and in fact, when they originally started development, the Civil War was in its last year or so. So technically, Civil War hadn't even ended when they started making these, or trying to make them. And by 1873, they had settled on a design, and some of the early prototype guns you can actually see are old. When you look at this area right here, you can actually see old musket markings, old markings from the U.S. military on the breech block. And then they kind of just have a cut, and these devices are lowered into them and welded in place, which is kind of cool. Well, this one is, like I said, in 1884, so it's one of the last design changed models. They did go through a lot of changes over the years, and these served through the American Indian Wars. So basically, this was the standard issue rifle from the end of the Civil War until roughly the 1890s, when they would they start using the Krag rifle, the Krag Jorgensen rifle, and then not too long after that, in 1903, they would adopt the Springfield 1903 rifle that would be in service for a very long time, in some capacity. So, but that's for another video. We're going to come in for a closer look on this rifle, and we will see how it works. So here we are looking at a closer look at this rifle, the 1884 Springfield trapdoor rifle, and these rifles are all chambered in 45-70, which is quite of a spicy cartridge according to some people, but given today shooting this gun, hindsight's 2020, and I've shot many other guns like, I don't know, the Enfield Jungle Carbine, that kick, it feels like a horse is kicking you in the shoulder, it feels like a mule's kicking you, or many of those old sayings that your grandpa probably told you about guns from World War II. And this rifle doesn't have that issue for me, and I'm a small guy. So because of its weight and length of the barrel is why I think that doesn't really affect me. And 45-70 is a very big cartridge. It looks like 45 ACP on crack. And it is a fun to shoot. It's kind of a novelty thing when I take it out to the range or let people shoot this gun. They're always like, oh, that's a big cartridge. Those are really cool. And I always like to tell them that that's the cartridge from the Jurassic World movies that Chris Pratt uses to shoot dinosaurs, which is kind of interesting. So on this rifle here, you can see it's dated 1884 model, which is one of the last generations of this rifle. Most of the changes on this rifle would be the sights. And when I take you in for a closer look on the sights itself, you will notice that why would they keep changing the sight? And it's just because that's how the military works. They're just constantly wanting to change and improve. So anyway, this is an 1884 model. We have a hammer here. We're going to cock it back. We have a lever here. And this lever lifts up, and you'll notice that click there. That click is this piece right here, and that's what ejects. So that's your ejector, which is kind of cool that you can see it. It's not hidden anywhere. There's your ejector right there. So you would chamber your round in there, close this down, pull the trigger, releasing the hammer, and it would fire. Then you would crank it back, lift it up, and the shell ejects out. That's how that functions there. All right, now this one has a stock mark of 1889. So we know in 1889 this had a stock changed out on it, and it was inspected by an arms inspector somewhere in the U.S. So that's something to look for. You can help date the rifle by that. If we move down to this butt plate, you'll see there's a U.S. mark on that butt plate. This is a bronze butt plate. But yeah, the U.S. has a lot of markings. There's another marking on this gun. If I can get my camera to work properly. Okay. So this one has this weird pistol grip thing here. I think it's kind of weird. I've only seen it on this gun in person, but I do know that these were a thing the military messed with a little bit. So that is something to keep in mind there. So if you see something like this, I like it on here. It's bronze. I don't know if it's aftermarket. It came with the gun when I bought it. And I do know like I said, I do know the military had some of them out there, but they weren't mass produced. So that's a cool little fact, fun fact there. Moving on down to the sights. So this is the sight. This is what I like to call a battle aperture sight. So you would use this most of the time, and it lines up with the little tiny dot front sight. That's actually really hard to see when you're shooting this gun. I kind of just put whatever I'm aiming at in between here and hope for the best. It is a very big cartridge, so normally you can hit what you're aiming at. Now, for this sight, and this is what was changed a bunch, you scroll that, and then this lifts up and down right here. So let me angle this for you so you can see it. So you would put that at whatever elevation or distance you're looking for, and you would tighten this down. And then that would be for like volley firing or shooting at a distance. And you'll see that a lot in Western movies. These were pretty popular. You know, this was the gun used through most of the American West period and by the U.S. military. So you'll see a lot of these around, and this sight in particular is pretty popular amongst collectors, but it's a horrible sight. So I just leave mine like this. I never try to shoot this at a really long distance. I just leave it down and hope for the best. It's not like I hunt with this rifle. I literally have this rifle for collecting purposes. One of the reasons I picked this rifle up is because it came with a bayonet, and I love bayonets. And this one here, if we put it on the rifle, so how this bayonet works, so we take it, and it slides over like that, and that's what locks it in place. And it's your standard spike. You can see our US mark right here. It's just a standard spike bayonet. These were not, contrary to popular belief, and this is a very long one, and I'll show you in a moment how long this thing actually is. So here is a look at the bayonet, and I'm a huge fan of bayonets. I think they're cool. They have a really interesting place in history. They're obsolete now, obviously, but we still are trained with them in the military. They still have somewhat of a purpose, but they're kind of more of a utility thing these days than what they were originally designed for. A lot of people think bayonets are, for close range combat and, you know, that kind of stuff. Or you'll see it in like movies like The Patriot, which are horribly inaccurate movies. But, you know, regardless of that point, the purpose of the bayonet, especially the spike bayonet, you notice this is not very sharp. Like this is, let me see if I can get you a closer look. There's no blade to this thing. It's just a three-pronged, it's got like a little bit of point at the end. And the whole purpose, especially when you put it on the gun, this thing is 18 inches long. To put that in perspective, that is 2 Nintendo Switches long. So you can see. So imagine having 2 Nintendo Switches shoved through your body. That's kind of a graphic and very interesting thing to think about. The whole purpose of the bayonet when it was invented was to fend off cavalry charges. So horses and stuff coming straight at your front line, they could point this down at them, stand in a staggered formation, and this would stick into the horse or the person. And while they were used in close quarters combat, and you'll see that bayonets, you know, that they were used in that to a degree. Their whole purpose was to, for that cavalry use. And that's why this doesn't look, that doesn't look anything like a knife, like a bayonet, like I would think from World War I, World War II. And they picked that up as they went along because they were like, well, crap, we might as well, if we're going to hang this giant thing off the front of our gun, we might as well make it an actual knife or a sword in some cases. Some of the British Enfield rifles literally have swords hanging off the front of them, which are cool. And hopefully I'll get my hands on one and can show you. But yeah, this is the bayonet, and contrary to popular belief amongst significant others out there, I found quite a few uses for this bayonet once I brought it home. One thing about this gun is its length. I like to say when I put the bayonet on this that this is 1 Mitch tall, because if I was to stand up, this gun is still taller than me. That might mean that I'm really short, but I would like to think that this gun is just ridiculously long. So if you are going to pick a full-size one up like this one here, you're going to want to invest in a case to put it in, because it's not going to fit in your gun safe. And if it does fit in your gun safe, then great, good for you. I'm glad you have lots of money and can afford really big gun safes. Mine is quite small. All right, so that's a closer look at the Springfield trapdoor rifle. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you down the road. I love it because you can hear it go and then watch where it goes. Crank it back, lift this up, it'll shoot that shell out.
Oh my god.
There's your other one.
How many of these do I have to shoot?
You gotta push it all the way in. There you go. Then pull the hammer back all the way. There you go, you're good.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, good.